Hello and welcome. I'm Neil Cannon, author of The Vitality Secret. In this video, I want to talk to you about burning fat. This is something that many people are challenged with, and I wanted to do this video because I want to share with you that it's much easier than you may think. You see, a lot of people are still focusing on calorie restriction, which means eating much less than normal and moving more. Whilst that does work to a certain extent, it tends not to work long term. So if you go back to the kind of 80s paradigm, we've been told to go low fat and high carbohydrate. And what this does is it really makes weight loss a very difficult challenge. It really is quite a challenge when you take this approach, when you're constantly chasing and looking after calories rather than focusing on what you eat. In fact, I'd go as far as to say as there was a huge media push in the early 80s which really shifted people into a low-fat way of thinking, and it was actually a very ill-informed decision, and it was a move that has really created a huge epidemic of obesity, type 2 diabetes. In fact, there's even a term called diabesity, because the same things that lead to obesity and diabetes, or type 2 particularly, is the same thing that triggers, well, both of them, obesity and diabetes. So that is chronic inflammation and a very high carbohydrate loaded diet. What actually happened back in the early 80s, when this media effort was actually put in front of us, was fat was demonized. So food manufacturers started to take out all the fat from their goods, and the fat, because fat actually tastes good, the fat was replaced with sugar. So now we see all these things on our shelves that say low fat, but we don't actually pay attention to the sugar content. So people started eating all these low-fat goods which were high in sugar. Sugar triggers your fat-storing hormone called insulin. When we're consistently consuming a high sugar diet, which isn't just sugar, it's actually carbohydrates as well, we're constantly spiking insulin. So this actually leads to insulin resistance and chronic inflammation, the root cause of almost every health challenge that exists these days. I've actually helped people reverse a number of chronic inflammatory conditions, and they've just burned fat with ease because they didn't realize that that's actually a product of this chronic inflammation. So they can get rid of symptoms like arthritis and gout, and then weirdly the fat drops off as well. So let's talk a little bit more about insulin. So when we consume a high sugar diet or a meal, your blood sugars spike very rapidly, much like an injection of sugar into your bloodstream. You get that happy high. It sends off these different pleasure, or ignites different pleasure centers in the brain, and it feels good for a while, but not for very long, about half an hour to an hour. And then what happens? You crash. You crash because your pancreas, when it's working well, secretes the hormone insulin to balance the blood sugar levels. It extracts the excess blood sugar from your blood to prevent it from becoming toxic. It has a very important job. It then deposits that insulin into different cells throughout the body. It goes into either your liver storage cells, or your fat storage cells, or your muscle storage cells, your glycogen stores. What normally happens if we're living a kind of sedentary life is the liver and muscle stores are full up, and the excess blood sugar gets deposited into your fat stores, then swell up and weight is gained. Weight is gained. What we're talking about is body fat really here. So this whole low-fat craze has triggered what we now know as the diabesity epidemic. The fastest way to burn through fat is to really reverse this. So go back to a pre-1980s way of living when you're kind of going high fat and low carb. And there's also an addition you can do, which is called the ketogenic diet, which has had different reviews, and it works for some people, it doesn't work for everyone. What you're doing with ketosis is not only are you really depriving yourself of these sugar spikes that trigger your fat-storing hormone insulin, but you're actually not allowing your body to burn glucose as fuel. So glucose is normally the fuel that we need to fuel our body, both physically and mentally, and we think that we need it. But we don't always need it. We can actually function on a different fuel called ketones. Your body produces ketones in the absence of the introduction of glucose into your body, glucose being a form of sugar. When you purposefully restrict the carbohydrate load into your body, which is also glucose or sugar, you actually kind of trick your body, not really trick, but you tell your body that it's not receiving glucose as a fuel. And what your body does, which is a perfectly safe mechanism, is your liver starts to produce ketones in the absence of the introduction of carbohydrates into your diet. And this is a fuel which actually allows you to function physically and mentally. In fact, people who are actually in ketosis find that their brain functions really effectively, more so than glucose in some cases. So the high-fat, low-carb is a really great way of burning through fat. And also the ketogenic diet is a great way of burning through fat. When you do just like a calorie-restrictive diet, it's not only painful and sacrificial, it takes forever and you're always hungry. You're consuming soups, for example, and it's really not enjoyable. Whereas ketosis, you don't get hungry. You actually, after a few days when you're fat adapted, you actually don't get hungry, you perform better, your energy goes that way, and you actually start to feel really, really good. The really cool thing about ketosis, which you may not want to do really long term, but it is effective at burning fat fast, but the really cool thing is that you quite literally turn your body into a 24/7 fat burning machine, and you don't go hungry. And your energy goes up and everything else cool happens in your body. It's really quite a remarkable method for not only burning fat, but reversing chronic inflammatory health conditions. We now know, as I said at the beginning, it's the root cause of just about every common illness and chronic disease, including most forms of cancer, which is why the ketogenic diet has been proven so effective in reversing or playing part of the protocol in reversing many forms of cancer. So that's a little bit of information for you on ketosis. I hope I haven't overloaded you. To find out more, I invite you to join my online program where I can actually guide you through this process and make it as an enjoyable journey for you as possible. Hit the link below this video and you'll be taken through to an explainer video, and I look forward to hearing from you and hearing about your results. Thank you for watching.